All right, so in the last video, we created the idea list component, which is showing these cards with some data from just a hard-coded array in our ideas property. So what I want to do is just get rid of these two objects and just have this as an empty array for now. So this is going to clear up. And we're going to create in a file, a class that we're going to dedicate to reaching out to our API and getting ideas, creating them, deleting, etc. So inside the client and source folder, we're going to create a new folder called services. That's what this is. It's an API service. So we'll create a new file. I'm going to call it ideasapi.js. And then we're going to create a class called ideasapi. And let's add a constructor, and for now all we're going to have as a property is the URL, so underscore API URL, and I'm going to set that to HTTP localhost port 5000, that's our backend, /API/ideas. That way we don't have to keep typing it for every request. And then we're going to have a get ideas method, and I'm actually going to use Axios instead of the fetch API, which is I prefer Axios. It's easier to work with, it has more features. So I'm going to just stop the dev server on the client and make sure that you're in the client folder, okay, because you don't want to install Axios in the back end. So let's say npm install Axios, and then we're just going to run the dev server again. It's going to open a new tab just because that's what it does. And then we want to bring Axios into the Ideas API service. So let's say import Axios from Axios. All right, and then all I'm going to do in this get ideas is return axios.get. So what you do with Axios is you just use the method. So we want to make a get request. So that's what we're doing here. And then we're going to just pass in the URL. And then when I export this, so what I'm going to do is say export default, and I'm actually going to initialize it here. You can do this. Instead of bringing it into a file and then initializing it, you can do it here. So I'll say new ideas API. That way I can just bring it in and then I can start using it. So we want to go into idea list. That's where we want to bring this in. And let's go to the top and let's say import ideas API, and the class name is uppercase, the file name is lowercase. So what I want to do now is we want these to load right when the page loads or right when this component loads. So in the constructor, I'm going to run this.getIdeas. Okay, that's not the API class getIdeas. I'm just saying this.getIdeas. That means I'm looking at a method in here called getIdeas. Okay, because I don't want to put all this in the constructor. So getIdeas now is going to be asynchronous because this, right, we're returning this response, and this is a promise. So we're going to use a sync await here. You could say get ideas dot then and do that, but I prefer a sync await. So we're going to use a try catch, and let's say const response or res, and then we want to await on the ideas API dot get ideas. Okay, and then I'm going to set this dot underscore ideas, which is an empty array at first, but then I'm going to set it to res dot data. Now that gives me the response, and I'm just going to jump to the back end real quick. And this is the endpoint that we're hitting. So remember, it returns an object with success true and data ideas. Now with Axios, when you make a request, the data is in an object called data. So in addition to that data, we want the data from right here. Okay, since I called that data too, then it's going to be data.data. So I know that looks weird, but if I called this ideas like that, then this would be res.data.ideas. So hopefully that clarifies why there's two data here. And then for now, I'm just going to do a console log of this dot underscore ideas. And if there's an error, then we'll just do a console log of that error. All right, now we're going to have an issue here. So if I come over and I open up my console, we're going to see a message that says, especially if you're in Chrome, I'm not sure how Firefox works with this, but it's not going to let us access our API because we're on a different domain, because we're using the front end dev server, which is localhost 3000, right? This isn't our production build. This is the dev build. So it's trying to access localhost 5000 and it's not letting us. Okay, it says it has been blocked by CORS. So CORS is cross-origin resource sharing. And basically what we need to do is on our back end, we need to enable CORS and we need to enable requests from this URL. You can enable requests from any URL if you want, but that's not really secure. So I'm just going to add localhost 3000 as a URL we can make a request from. So this won't take long. We're just going to jump into the backend server.js. And the easiest way to do this is to install the CORS package. So remember, this is our backend. So I'm going to go back to my other terminal where we're running on port 5000. I'm going to stop the server and then npm install CORS. And then we'll run the server again. Okay, and all we have to do is, first of all, bring CORS in. So let's go right under where we brought in Express. And let's say const CORS, set that to require CORS. And then we're going to come down, let's go under the body parser middleware, and we'll say CORS middleware. And say app.use. Now you could just do app.use CORS, right? And that would enable you to make a request from anywhere, but I'm actually going to pass in an object here and we're going to set an origin. So an origin property, which is going to be an array of URLs that you allow to make requests from. So I'm going to do HTTP localhost port 5000 and then also HTTP localhost port 3000, which is our front end dev server. And we're just going to set credentials to true. All right, now that, just putting that in there should now let us make our request. So let's come back over here and reload. And now notice that error is gone and we have an array with an object that has our idea, our positive newsletter idea from Tony Stark. And it has this underscore ID, which is created by MongoDB. We already went over that stuff. But we're able now to fetch the data, which is what I wanted. Now you're probably saying, well, why is it rendering? Because we're rendering this dot underscore ideas, right? Down here, we're basically mapping through and outputting a card for each one. The reason for that is because we're calling the render, so the idea list render is happening before we actually get the ideas back from the API. Because remember, when we fetch our data, that's asynchronous. So our code keeps running and we're rendering before we get it. So to fix this, we're not going to render it here. So we can get rid of that. And what we're going to do is in the idea list, right after, so in get ideas, right after we get the ideas, then we're going to call this dot render. And let's see, that's still not working. What did I forget? Connection refused. Oh, there we go. Not sure why. I guess I just had to reload. So now we're actually getting our data from the database. Now, if we want to add a new idea just to kind of test things out, we can go to Postman. I mean, ultimately we'll be able to use the form, but we don't have that functionality yet. So let's try this out by just doing a post request to HTTP. Stupid pop-ups. So localhost port 5000/API/ideas. And let's go to body URL encoded. And let's add text. And I'm just going to grab one of these ideas and paste that in. You can put anything. And then tag, let's say, inventions. And then, what else? Username, we'll say Bruce Banner. Okay, let's send that. So we get a successful response. Now let's go to our front end and reload. And you can see it gets added. Oh, I misspelled inventions. So that's why this is black and it doesn't have the color. I can just make a put request, get the ID, Diaz/that, yep, and then just change inventions to 1S, send that, reload, and now it's correct. Okay, so we have our API service getting the ideas in our idea list component. We're then getting the ideas from our API, from our service, and then putting it into ideas, and then we're rendering, looping through, creating a card for each idea. So I think in the next video what I want to do is add the form functionality so that we can actually create ideas through our application.